Alright, this lesson we're going to do a 3D skybox with a displacement, and we're going to go ahead and scale the textures in the map once we do this. So we're going to start by creating a new map. So we're going to click File, New. Once you create that new map, you're going to take your block tool. I want you to make a box that's 1024 by 1024. We're going to take that box. Remember, the origin point is these two green lines. I'm going to go ahead and set my box just under that, like this. We're going to take our entity tool, info player start, and I want you to drop a player near the center. So you should see your origin point, which is this little thing right here. That's the very center of the game world, and we'll go ahead and put the player near it. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to create several copies of this piece of ground. Alright, so I am just going to go Shift, click, drag, and I'm going to release the mouse. That creates a copy, and we're going to go ahead and put it right next to this one. And we're just going to keep doing that. And we're going to just make a grid of 9. Right? And then once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and increase the grid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Control, and I'm going to select several of these. I'm going to copy them. So again, I'm just Shift, click, drag, making copies. And our goal here is we're just trying to make a box, a grid out of these right here. So I'm going to hold down Control and grab all these. And I'm going to do the same thing. Shift, click, drag, release the mouse, line these ones up. Shift, click, drag, release the mouse. And I'm going to line these guys up. And let's see, let's do one more row. So I'm going to Shift, click, drag. Make sure they're lined up. Not overlapping, just touching. Shift, click, drag. There we go. Alright. And then again, I'm going to click, hold down Control, and grab all these pieces. And I will Shift, click, drag. And one more time. Alright, so I'm going to end up with, what do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it should be 7 by 7. Yep, so 7 on each side. So there's my whole grid. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and select all the blocks. Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to use our surface tool here, our face edit sheet. So we're going to go to our face edit texture tool, and we're going to grab all the blocks. And remember, what this is doing is selecting just the tops of the blocks. Okay? When you're making a displacement, it's very important to only grab the tops of the blocks. Right? So I'm going to go through here and I'm going to grab all the tops. I'm holding down Control as I go through and select all of these. Turn around here. So I'm holding Control and I'm clicking. And if we fly over here to the side, what you'll see is I've just grabbed the tops. I haven't grabbed any of the bottoms, just the tops. So when you're making a displacement, this is really important, is that you only grab the tops. If you grab the sides and the bottoms, you end up with this, like, I don't know, weird brownie pan kind of looking material. So I went to my face edit tool, my texture tool, I held down control and I selected all the tops. I'm going to go to displacement and I'm going to click create. For power, we'll just leave it at 3. There's my displacement. Right, so let's fly around a little bit here, see what this looks like. Grid looks pretty good. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to just we're going to go ahead and put some mountains around the edges here. So I'm going to click paint geometry. This is how far it's going to raise and lower. This is the effect, raise and lower. That means left or right mouse. We're going to do soft edge. Radius controls the size of the raise lower tool, I guess, displacement tool. So I'm going to make it fairly large. I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to left click a little bit. And I'm just going to paint some hills out here. So I'm going to fly up into a better position. So what I want to do is I'm going to avoid the center where the player is. Okay. So I'm just going to paint myself some hills in here. It sounds very Bob Ross. And I'm going to fly around a little bit more. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I'm just painting some hills, mountains around the perimeter of my map. Okay, and we've done this before, so it should be kind of review. You maybe remember doing this. Let's go down to the player's view, see what it looks like. Looks good to me. All right. Make sure auto check or auto sew should be checked when you're doing this, especially if you get too aggressive with the painting. That will fix some of your errors. So if you have auto sew checked by default, it'll sew any gaps you might accidentally create. All right, so I'm going to be done with that. So I've got some hills. Now notice I left the area around the player alone. I don't want to mess with that. Now we're going to add our sky camera. Right? And if you remember from yesterday, the sky camera has to go in the exact center of the map. So I'm going to put it right where these green lines intersect. And you can tell if you're there because these lines will go right through it. Now mine needs to go up a little bit. All right, so this is what it should look like. The red, the green, and the blue lines should go right through the center of this sky camera. All right. Oops, wrong button. Alright, so what we're going to do now is make sure your camera is selected, so it should be red, okay? So if your camera is not selected, click it, and then kind of fly yourself up. You're going to hold down your control button, and you're going to go ahead and select all of these pieces except the section where the player is there in the middle. So we're going to leave all the rest of this alone. Now I go slowly when I do this because I've had Hammer crash on me more times than I like to remember. doing this right here. For some reason, when you do a lot of brush clicking, it just crashes. And I've had it happen so many times. I'll be clicking through here and I'll get to the 30 or 40 clicks and the whole thing will just crash on me. Okay, so I've got the camera selected, and then I've got all the ground around the player selected. Right? We're going to go to Tools, and let's go ahead and group it. That way it's all together. Then I'm going to go to Tools again, Transform, Scale, and then we're going to do 0.0625, 0.0625, 0.0625. All right, and all this is 1/16th scale. That's all. It's just 1/16th converted to decimal. I'm going to click OK. And now that whole displacement became this little tiny thing right here. So I'm going to grab that, move it off to the side. Now we need to put a skybox on here. Take my block tool and make a box around this. And we want this box to touch the ground. So this is important so we don't create a gap that the player can fall down. So we're going to come in here and we're just going to grab all these sides and we're going to make this skybox exactly the same size as the box that the player's standing on. Then we're going to give it some height. And we're going to go down here. Over here, we're going to browse. Type in Skybox. Go all the way to the bottom, and we're going to grab this one here, the one that says Skybox. Double click. Press Enter to create it. Now this is a solid box, so I need to hollow it out. So I'm going to right click, make hollow, and we're going to use -16. So what that does is it builds the box outward instead of hollowing it out. Here, it actually builds the walls -16 outward. So that means the edges of my skybox are going to be right against the edge of the ground, but they're going to be -16 thick outwards. So click OK. And you saw the box grow just a tiny bit there. Okay, hollow. Everything looks good, no gaps. Perfect, perfect. There's my player. So now let's go find this. Now we're going to do the exact same thing with our displacement. So I'm going to take my block tool, make a box. I'm going to take that box and I want it to be right up against the edges here. So I'm going to have to reduce my grid size so that I can get this to touch the corner. And let's check this side. That works. We've got our sky already selected. I don't need it to be quite this big, so I'm gonna, oh man, I just messed it up. Let's do that again. All right, so block tool. I made it way too big, so I'm gonna grab the corner, shrink it, get it right to there, grab this side, right to the edge. The height looks good. I'm going to press enter. That creates the box. Now I'm going to come over here, right click on it in any one of these 2D views, make hollow, -16, click OK, and you're going to see this box grow a little bit because it just grew out by 16. All right? Now let's go ahead and test run it at this point, so I'm going to save it. Let's call this 3D Sky Displace. Okay. I'm going to press F9 to run it. And I'm going to load my map. Looks good. displacement. You can see where my level ends. All right, now what happened here? So what we did is we forgot to turn on the texture lock. So the texture lock, when you scale a brush, what it does is it scales the texture with it. So so if we cut a brush in half, it would scale the texture by half. So we didn't do that. So what we end up with is the texture on my hills looks way different than the texture on my ground. So we're going to go ahead and fix that. And this is the secret to putting texture into your 3D Skybox. So let's get out of the game and let's go take a look at our 3D Skybox. All right, so here's the ground. So what I need to do is go ahead and select this. So again, I'm going to have to hold down Control and select all of these blocks. And this will take a second. Remember to save often, because this thing likes to crash all the time. Especially when you're clicking brushes. I don't know why, but it does. Alright, so there, I've got my entire displacement selected. Alright, now we're going to look at my face edit sheet. So when we see texture scale right here, we're going to think, what did we scale the map to? We scaled it to 0.0625, which is the decimal equivalent of 1/16. Now what a lot of people make a mistake on is they come in here and they put this to 0.0625. Now the problem with that is my texture by default is not at a scale of 1. It's defaulted to a 0.25. So that means that my texture starts out its life already at quarter scale. So what we need is a quarter of, or I'm sorry, we need a 1/16 of a quarter, okay? So what we're going to do is we need to do the math on that, and we need to figure out what is 1/16, what is 0.0625 of 0.25. So if you take out your calculator, go ahead and do the math. You're going to take 0.25, multiply it by 0.0625, and see what you get. I'll give you a second. So you should have gotten this. So my textures in Source Engine, their default scale is 0.25, which means they're 1/4 normal size. That's what they start out as. So if we put 0.0625, we're going to 1/16, but that is 1/16 of 1. So the problem here is that my textures, they already start at 1/4 or 0.25. So to figure out 1/16 of 0.25, I just multiply it by 0.0625, which is 1/16. So that's going to give me 1/16 of 1/4. So hopefully that makes sense, but this is the magic number you want for your textures within this skybox right here. So we're going to use 0.015625. So 0.015625. Don't forget to do it on both. 0.015625. Apply. All right, now let's run the map again. So I'm going to recompile. And let's reload the map. And look at that. Perfect. Okay, so you can't even tell, there's no seam at all. It's absolutely perfect. This looks like a seam right here, but I think it's just the texture, the way it repeats itself. Okay, great. All right, so now let's go back. So inside my 3D Skybox, let's go ahead and make a little tiny building. Okay. So let's just take our block tool. Okay. And let's go browse, type in building, and pick one you like. I'm going to do, let's do this one. Alright, so right away we can tell these windows are ginormous. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is take our texture tool, and again, we need to scale it to 0.015625, 0.015625. So now everything, these windows look extremely tiny, but that's because they're 1/16 of 1/4. So they're very small. However, if we run this, and we go back into our game, reload, the windows are scaled properly for the character. They actually, that's the size that they would be if we used them in game. All right. This holds true if you're doing buildings, walls, or water. Any of the textures you use inside of the 3D Skybox, if you're doing a road, it needs to be 0.015625. That is 1/16 of 1/4 is the proper texture scale for this. So your assignment is to make a 3D Skybox with a displacement, and I want you to use a mixture of your own buildings, like we just did here, mixed in with the Skybox buildings and other materials that you can find. So I want a mix of your own buildings that you created just the way we did this one. You can make them more elaborate if you want, but the main thing is you're using a texture that's been scaled to 0.015625, and then you're going to mix this in with those little tiny miniature buildings. So we're going to have a mix of your own buildings as well as the buildings that are included with the game, along with a displacement inside your 3D Skybox. So when you look at this, I mean, it's pretty fantastic what we just did. This is totally seamless. This map is very small. We would never use a 3D Skybox for a displacement this small, but the concept works. If I did this on a bigger map, this would be absolutely perfect. The ground is 100% seamless. You cannot see the difference between the world, which is over here, and the 3D Skybox, which starts right around here at my feet somewhere. But it's, to the player, it's completely seamless. There's no difference between anything. It looks perfect. All right, so your assignment is a 3D Skybox with a displacement. Surround the player with some buildings that you've created and some of the buildings that are actually part of the game as well.